Welcome everybody. In this tutorial we are going to be making a drag and drop game, and this game is going to be actually quite a bit of fun here. And what we're going to do is we're going to use Construct 2, so you can download that and start a new template here. Now when it comes to templates, you need to think about where it's going to go first of all, and you, and for the most part, how what kind of style of game do you have? So first of all, um, Construct 2 makes HTML5 games, and that means that you can pretty much deploy them anywhere that will run a website. And most game consoles and platforms run HTML5. The biggest problem with this, though, is that each device has a different screen resolution. So for example, you might have a screen resolution on an iPhone, and even there's three different sizes for iPhone, but there's the iPhone, you can do it for the iPad, an Android phone, an Xbox, a Wii U, etc. So what do we do here? Now, personally, I like to make games in the landscape version here. So you can see here that we have an HD landscape version. So I'm going to go ahead and double click that. Now you can see here that it comes up with the screen here, and it's actually really big. Okay. Now I know what the resolution of this is, but what I want to do is I want to hop into layout size here, and what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take a look at this here, and this layout size is going to be 1920 by 1080. Okay, and what that will do is that will make sure that everything here works quite well. All right, so you can see here that this is now the screen here. Before we even move on from this, another thing you have to keep in mind is we'll take a look at this here. Full screen and browser. You know, we got letterbox scale. We have all these different kinds of scales here. What this means is that it will scale the game appropriately, whether that's smaller or bigger. Now, generally, when you scale your game size, if you go smaller, it's better than if you go larger, because larger, the computer has to fill in the details, whereas smaller compression works a little bit better. Okay, so now that we have this game here, we're going to go and we're going to add in some of our game objects in the next tutorial. I'll see you then. All right, let's take a look at how we can go and make this game first of all. So first things first is you want to think of some kind of aesthetic. Now, there's a lot of games out there that actually have really simple art and are actually really fun to play. I highly recommend that you go down this road first before you start adding in a ton of art. Now, if you're an artist, because a lot of artists like to make games, I would suggest working on game mechanics first and adding art later. The problem with art is that you need to have animation. And the problem with animation is that there are companies out there that make $1 million movies with animation, and they set the bar so high that the public has a certain expectation. And that expectation, because it's so high, can make your game not as fun to play, because they'll think, well, the animation isn't as good. And those companies do that completely on purpose because they have the money to employ the best people, and the best people can make the product the best. It's just simple business. So if you can make a very simple game, and if you look at retro games are really good for this. They make really simple graphics, yet these graphics are they do put out the right message, and they give the right response to what you're trying to do. So what we're going to do first is we're going to create a background. Now I'm going to go and I'm going to double click and I'm going to create a sprite here. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put an off black here. Now when it comes down to this here, now I'm just actually going to make this a lot bigger so you can see it. So this color palette's pretty cool here. Now when it comes to making anything that deals with black or white, I always like to make sure that it's a little bit off black, right? And a little bit off white too. So for example, if you wanted to, let's say I'm going to drag this all the way down to gray. If you wanted to make something that was more like this, and you can see all of the options here, by the way. or if it was completely black, your brain does notice a difference. Okay, so I'm actually going to leave this maybe about here. Now, another thing you can do is, and here's a little tip. If you want to give a dark background, which we are going to do, by the way, we're going to give a dark background. You don't necessarily have to make it black. The whole point of it is to be dark, not black. And there's a difference between that. And what you can do is you can actually make it a blue, but you can make it a very dark blue. Okay, and this, if you look really closely, is still dark blue. You can do this with any color. You can make it dark green, and they all have just a little bit of a difference between each one. You can make it a very dark red, right? And red's a little bit harder to do, but you can do it. So even though there's just a little bit of a hint of red, your brain will notice the difference. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to make this almost black here. Okay, and once you close that here, and one thing that you need to do, we'll just kind of move this over back here, is the reason why it's small is because, and by the way, you have to click the paint button here, and I'm going to simply put that in here. It's not black. In fact, maybe just a little bit more to the light side. So you can see that that's dark gray, but something more like that. There we go. And that's going to be the background here. Now, in order to make this the background, I'm just going to kind of drag this here, and we'll take a look at the position, and we can kind of, if this size is 250, watch what happens when we type in the position as 250, okay? Not quite as much as we want here. So we're just going to kind of drag this here, and we're going to kind of move it out here. Now, generally when you're working with sprites like this, what you don't want to do is, and by the way, I'm pushing Control plus my mouse wheel here. What you don't want to do is you don't want to, when you're working with sprites, you don't want to resize it like this. The only way we can resize it is because it's one color. And that's what I mean by going simple, is that if it's simple, then it can work here. And you'll also notice if I zoom in as much as I can, the sides here have a little bit of a gradient. That's just the way Construct 2 is, and it's something you have to keep in mind here. Now, this is a huge resolution. Now, I'm going to hop into my Layers tab here, and this here is going to be my background. Okay, and I'm going to lock it, and the reason why I'm going to lock it is very simple, is because now we can't play around with this if we don't want to here. So I'm going to add another layer here, and these layers are really important to actually make your game here. You can put layers, and we'll talk a little bit more about why they're so important. Thanks for listening, and this concludes the tutorial. Alright, so what we need to do is we need to go and add in our sprites here. Now, as you can see here, we have a layer here, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in the sprite here. And this game here, I'm going to make kind of like a neon color here, so we'll go with kind of a neon pink to start off with, okay? And this is going to be, just our first sprite here. And you see here that this is on layer 0. Okay, we can call this, and if we push F2, we can call this main layer. And if I go and I uncheck this, you can see it disappears. And what that means is that we can't see that layer. So if you need different layers, for example, your heads-up display, or like displaying your score or something like that, you can put them on different layers, and it's highly recommended that you do that here. Another thing we need to do is you need to take a look at this here. It says Sprite 2, and if I uncheck the background here, it says Sprite, just simply Sprite. Well, let's go ahead and let's change this to background. Okay, background like that. And that way we know what that is here. And if we look at the projects here, we can see the object types, you got background, and we have a sprite 2 here. Now, let's take a look at what we're actually going to be trying to do. We are going to be trying to simply drag objects into a box here. Okay, and I should also point out at this point in time that the aesthetic is going to be somewhat of a neon color, and the black background contrasts the light neon colors quite well. Usually dark colors contrast light colors and vice versa. Now with games, if you're an artist or you're a graphic artist, what can happen is that In art, like if you were to go, let's say, paint a painting or do something in Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator, you tend to have a lot of variety and a lot of contrast in between the lightest and the darkest. Usually with games, there's less contrast. Okay. However, this is going to be an exception where we have the most contrast. But if you're making a game, kind of like Super Mario Brothers, the contrast between light and dark isn't that much as you would normally see in art. All right. So now that we have this here, we're going to go and we have to do a couple things here. Let's just add in a bunch of these objects here. Now, what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to say the size is 200 and then 200. And that will make the size down here. But if you want to change the size of the actual sprite, you have to double click and click on this arrow here and make it 200 by 200 like that. Okay, and I think this is going to be a better size. Okay, and for the most part, what we're going to do is we're just going to simply add in a bunch of these. But before we do that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to call this pink block. Okay, and what we need to do is just a little bit more planning as to what we're going to do specifically. And I'm going to show you a very good technique to make sure that you don't waste time when you're making apps, games, etc. I'll see you in the next tutorial. Alright, so what we're going to be doing in this tutorial is we're going to be setting up most of our game here. Now what I'm going to do is this game is going to be very simple. You're going to have smaller blocks which you have to then feed into the right color box. It's very simple and effective, and it's very easy to learn and understand. When it comes to HTML5 games and mobile games and pretty much games that you play online, these games have to be very simple. They have to have a very small learning curve, but they have to have the maximum amount of fun. What this is not, you're not going to give a 30-minute introduction to, a huge story or whatnot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the other objects here, and these are going to be the objects that we drag into. So I'm going to go clone object type. Okay, and what this will do is if you see here we have pink block and we have pink block 2. Now when you take a look at this, what you should do is if you go, instead of calling it pink block, you can call this a different color here. So we'll go ahead and we'll make this blue. Now if I zoom in here, you'll see that it creates a little bit of a border. So in order to get rid of that, you have to kind of select everything, delete it, and then put it in there here. And this will be blue block. Okay. There we go. We'll go ahead and we'll clone this again. And this is going to be, let's see, we got pink, blue, we need some kind of neon green color. So I'll just go ahead and delete all of this first and then go with to that in here. And you can see that it's actually already looking to be pretty good here. Now, I've been making games for a while. And I know that when you look at something really simple like this, like having neon on black, it looks pretty good. You need to go and find your your aesthetic too. So this one I'm going to make more of an orange color. Now orange is actually kind of a tricky color to do. The reason is that orange, unlike a lot of other colors, is very narrow. So think about it. If you have blue, you have navy blue, you have regular blue, you have sky blue, and those are all different colors of blue. But orange, dark orange is not, we don't call it dark orange, we call it brown, right? So if I just move this back to dark orange, we get brown. So orange is actually kind of a tricky color. It's also, if you were to really think about it, yellow would be a light orange, but we call them different things. So this end of the spectrum is a little bit tricky. And when you think about it, a dark yellow is actually still kind of a brown. And if you want to get really into this, a darkish yellow is kind of gold color. So just keep that in mind. So we're going to call this orange block. And you can have spaces in there, and if you put in a space, it won't do that here. So I think maybe one or two more we can do this here, and we're going to of course make this a bright yellow, and we'll just kind of delete that here, and we'll take a look and just simply add that in as yellow here, and that looks pretty good. And can we actually put in another object here? So we kind of got this pink here. We could probably make this more pink. Okay. we'll definitely make this more pink, and you're going to see why in just a second. And let's move that in here. Put that pink. That looks a lot more pink. This one here, we're going to, of course, make a purple. Okay, and in order to make it more of like a neon purple, you have to kind of make it. It can't be a dark purple like this because it's just simply. In fact, let's actually. I'm going to do this just to show you what I'm thinking about here. Okay, so if I go and I make this a dark purple, you can take a look at that, and that doesn't necessarily look that bad, but you can tell it's out of place. These are all really bright colors, and the purple isn't quite what we want here. So we kind of want something more like that to be our purple here. Okay, and I'm just going to go ahead and do that here. Okay, and that looks quite a bit better. And if we're going to make this into a purple, you can kind of play around with this area here to see what you want here. In fact, this might actually just be a better option. And you'll see why that there is less pink in this. And there we go. So we got a purple. And just because I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, you can just move that up just a hair slider to the lighter side. And we'll go and do that here. So now we have, in fact, we have 6 blocks in total. And these 6 blocks here, if we take a look at this here, and yep, and these 6 blocks here are going to be the blocks that we go and drag everything into. Okay, and we can place these, equidistantly here for now, and we'll deal with the actual spacing in another tutorial. This concludes the tutorial. Alright, so now that we have our blocks here, we need to go and we need to add in a bunch of blocks that we are going to simply drag into. Now, you have to keep in mind that while this looks big to you, if someone's playing this on an iPhone, these blocks are not going to be super big. Okay, so the blocks that we're going to drag into are probably going to have to be smaller, but not much smaller. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to clone this object type here, and I'm going to go and I'm going to just see if we can make this 150 by 150. All right, and we'll just go ahead and take a look at that there. And that actually looks pretty good. We could probably even drag it down to maybe 130 by 130. And by the way, I'm using tab. Anytime you can use the keyboard, it looks pretty good. And if I take a look and I kind of move them in here, just like that, you can see that, yeah, that actually probably looks just about right. And it's just big enough for your fingers to go and take a look there. So what we can do is if we if we select all of these and we go right click, clone object type isn't activated, so we have to do this manually. So I'm just going to do that right now, just clone each object type here, and they're just taking a little bit of steps to make sure that this project goes well here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, and we said it was 130 by 130, all right, and push OK. And we can double click on this here, and we'll go 130 by 130, OK, and I push escape. And whenever you use the keyboard, it really speeds up productivity. You want to make sure that your productivity is super high when it comes to game development here. And the reason for that is, time that you're making your game is time that you could be making money on the App Store, or if you just want to make a free game, it's time that your players aren't even enjoying your game, which you should never forget is the real reason why you're doing the game here. Now, we have this. We have pink block, blue block, green block, orange block, and then in this one we actually even forgot to do this. We'll call this purple block. Just a bit of housekeeping here. You can see here that orange block has a capital letter. Not necessarily. It's not necessarily necessary to do that here, but actually this one has to be yellow block. Yellow block and not yellow block 2. And then this one has to be orange block. And it's good to keep consistent. I always make sure that the first word is not capitalized. Okay, and so we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, for these here, we could actually even call this these box here. But what I'm going to do actually is I'm actually going to go drag. I'm going to type in drag here, and then I'm going to keep that in here. I'm just going to copy drag. And the reason why we're doing this here is very simple, is because when it comes up alphabetically, all of the drag objects are going to come up first. And you're probably thinking that that is, something really, really basic, but that can help you out, especially when it comes to the end of the production run. And we'll call this yellow block like that, and then we have drag purple block just like that here. And when it comes to the end of the production run, you want to make sure that everything is going smoothly, because that's the hardest part to get your game to the App Store here. All right, I'll see you in the next tutorial. So what we need to do now is we need to actually make these drag and droppable. So we need to go and we need to click on the behavior here, and we're going to go and do the drag and drop. And what this is going to do is that this is going to allow the person to drag and drop here. So you can drag it and you can drop it anywhere you want, just like how I'm doing here, but you'll be able to do that in game. Remember, when you are making a game, anything that you need to do, you need to add in some kind of behavior or some kind of code. Now this code here, anything that you see within the behaviors here, there's actually quite a bit of back-end code that you're not writing, and that's why I like using Custruct too. Of course, I could type this out, but it takes a lot of time to do that, and I'm just going to go ahead and add that in here. All right. Now another thing that we need to do is I'm going to double click on here, and we're going to add in the touch object here. And what this touch object does is that this allows people to use their touch screen. But what it also allows people to do is it also allows people to use their mouse. Now when it comes to any kind of mobile games, I highly recommend just seeing if you can do everything with touch without the keyboard or without the mouse. Now, unless you're making specifically desktop games, and it is very possible that you are using desktop games or making desktop games, you want to make sure that the mobile people are not left out, because mobile will work on your iPhone, your Android, your tablet, anything like that, and it will also work on your computer. So really, it's working out quite well. All right, I'll see you in the next tutorial. One thing we haven't done yet is run our game here. So let's do that first here. So let's go, and we simply go into run layout here. Now it comes up in Chrome because that's my default browser here. And you can see that this works out quite well. And if your computer screen can see this, you'll see that my off black is definitely contrast to the black, and you can see that there is a difference between the two. And if you take a look at these, we can drag and drop these in every single way, shape, or form. I am using the mouse in this case. However, if we were on an iPhone or something like that, it would also work as well. A couple of issues though. If we go ahead and we take a look at the debug layout, you can actually see all of the different options here. But the main issue is this little white thing at the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go and just take a quick look at what that is. I'm going to uncheck the background, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag this out just a bit here. And all it means is that the background just didn't quite cover it here. So I'm going to go back to run layout here, and as you can see that works out quite well. Now there's a couple of other issues though. All right, let's take a look at the project properties here, and you can see here around here there's all these different options here. We got full screen in browser, and we're going to do letterbox scale, okay, and that should be the default, and you'll see the difference here. Okay, and even though these are simple graphics, they do make everything work well. And that's another reason to not make very complex graphics, especially when you're first starting out, is that the scale of this game works out incredibly well, because scaling a box is simple, whereas scaling a super detailed, dragon is not. So as you can see, there's a little bit of white again on the side here, and what that means here is that we just need to go and uncheck the background here, and we'll just simply move it over just a hair. We'll go ahead and run the layout again, and there we go. You can see that works out quite well. So now what the game is going to be is we're simply just going to drag the right color to the right box. Now you're probably thinking, well, that's silly because they're all in the right order. Well, we haven't added in all of the game yet here, but it actually makes quite a bit of sense. You can just drag that in here, drag that in here, and we can do a whole bunch of cool things that we can do with this game. All right, so that concludes the tutorial. So let's hop back into our event sheet here. And the first things first, we're going to actually make a global variable, and we're going to call it a score. You can call your variables whatever you want. Just make sure that your variables are actually the right name, because when it comes down to crunch time, you want to make sure that your variables are the proper name. So what I'm also going to do is I'm going to add a subfolder, and I'm going to call this drag blocks. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all of my drag objects into this block here, and into this folder here actually. And that way it will make it a little bit easier. I'm going to call this goal blocks, and I'm just going to simply put in the rest of the blocks here. Now you're probably thinking this is not necessary, and while your game will work and will function, you can upload it to the App Store and whatnot. Productivity is all about is definitely about organization too, because it will affect you. So what we need to do is we need to say if this blue block comes into contact with this block here, what happens? So if I say, for example, I'm going to go drag blocks. If drag blue block comes onto collision with the blue block, then we're going to simply say system add to score, and this is just going to add 1 to score. So we get a point when that happens. Now there's going to be other things that we do here, but we're just going to deal with this for now. So there's 6 blocks in total, so we're going to make sure it's copied here. Just push Control C, and I'm going to paste it 3 times, 4, 5, 6 times. Now what we have to do is we have to change the objects here. So we got drag blue block is in collision with blue block. I'm going to make this green block. And then I'm just going to do this in alphabetical order when it comes to on the screen here. I feel that that's usually the best way. And I'm just kind of clicking here, pink block. Now, when it gets to bigger games, you'll have to change up your workflow just a bit, just because you don't want to do this for 100 sprites. But for 6, it's not so bad. But there's a problem here, and whenever you copy and paste something, you always want to make sure that the logic works out. But in this case, drag blue block comes into collision with green block. Well, that doesn't make any sense at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go replace the object here, and then I'm going to say drag blue block is going to be replaced with green block. Okay, and that actually makes perfect sense. We're going to go drag blue block is replaced with orange. We're going to go drag blue block, and then we're going to say this is the pink block. And then we're going to go replace the drag blue block with the purple. We actually have 2 more here. We have drag block, drag blue, and then we're going to go with yellow. Okay, and so what will happen here is we'll simply add 1 to the score. But we can also add in another item here. We're going to go to drag blue block, and I'm just going to type in destroy. And I actually can do this with my left hand. And whenever you type something in here, for example, up at the top, it will, for example, if you wanted to rotate clockwise and you typed in rotate, you see all of the actions that will have a rotate in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply say destroy, and I love doing this here because I can do it with my left hand as my right hand is on the mouse. Okay, so we'll go to orange, destroy, and I'm actually using my thumb to push the enter key on my numpad there. Just a little bit of a tip there. So do destroy, destroy, and destroy. So what that will do is when we run this here, okay, so if we drag this in here, it destroys it, bam, 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 and then bam. There we go. Okay, and that pretty much wraps that up. That concludes tutorial. Alright, so what happens if you drag, for example, let's just run this layout here, and or we can run the debug layout here, and what happens if we drag it and we put it in the wrong box? Okay, this doesn't look cool, although actually it does kind of look neat how we can kind of put that in there. But you get the idea though. Like what happens when we drag in the wrong box? All right, we need to find a way to deal with that here. Well, it's actually quite simple. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say drag blue box on drop. And so what that means is that when you're dragging, so if I just run this again, or run the debug layout, when we're dragging on the drop, so I've stopped dragging it, we're going to go and do something. Okay, so we're going to say drag, and we're going to set the drag block to, we're going to set the position to just simply a random position. And I'm going to go to random, and it's going to be, let's say, 100, and the X is horizontally, so 100, and then we have 1920. Let's see, probably let's do 200, and 1920. We'll say 1700. So what it's going to do is it's going to set a random position in between 200 and 1700. So if I just close that for a second here, it's going to take somewhere in between, here and here. It's going to set it somewhere up there, just like that. Now we also need to set the Y here, and I'm going to say that the Y is probably about 700 to 100. All right, and what I'm looking there for is I'm actually looking at the position. So if we set it to anywhere, it could end up hitting these blocks here. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to say it's roughly 700 to maybe about 100 there. So let's hop back into here, and we'll say random, and you need to put in the bracket there, and we'll go 100, 700. Very, very simple stuff here. But there's another problem, is that if we drop it here on the drop, it doesn't necessarily work here. This is pretty much on any drop here. In fact, we can actually just run this here. So if we drop it, it will simply put it into a random position, which actually looks kind of cool. Okay, just simply we drop it here, and if we do that here, it works. The other thing you can do is that if it isn't connecting to another blocks there, we can go and add that in. But for the most part, this works. So I'm going to copy this 6 times, and then we have to replace the object with, of course, the green, and then replace the object orange, replace the object pink. And you can see that I'm doing it in the same order. It's really important that you keep a systematic, whatever that system is, you just make sure you want to keep a systematic process there. So we have all that here, and we need to replace this object too, and we're just simply just go with green. We're going to replace this object and go with orange. And I know this seems a little bit tedious, but it's just kind of the way it works. Okay, purple and yellow. Okay, so there we go. And so if we kind of run this here, if I drag it, it kind of just moves over. But if I go and actually play the game correctly, it actually works too. And it even works if I drag it here onto the wrong box. It just kind of moves it to a random location, which actually is pretty cool. Now we could add in some code to snap it back to its original location, but this is not only easier, it actually makes it's not only easier, but it works just the same. And when you're making your projects, you want to make sure that if you get a similar effect with half as much work, you definitely want to do that. Just because, especially as an indie developer, time is not on your side, and the world is not on your side. So you want to make sure that your game is in the hands of players as quickly as possible. That concludes the tutorial. So what we need to do next is that when we run the layout here, and we go and we run this here, we could go and we can put in all of these here, but it doesn't really add into a continuation of the game. We could technically make that what we just saw there a tutorial where you just simply drag it in here, which actually isn't that bad of a tutorial. But what we're going to do instead is we're going to respawn the blocks here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to System, create object, and again, I'm using my left hand to just type in the word create, and I'm going to go and do drag blue blocks here, and I'm going to put in the exact same random here. It's going to be 200, and then it's going to be 1700, like that here. So I'm going to go to random, and this one here is going to be 100 and then 700, just like that. So all this is going to do is, let's just run this layout again. So if I run this here, you can see that it creates it here, and it just simply creates it there, there, and there, and there we go. Pretty cool. All right, let's go ahead and let's take a look at what we can do here. So I'm going to copy, I'm going to paste all of this in here, and this is actually going to be fairly simple. All we're going to need to do is double click on this. Instead of blue block, we're just going to make a green block. And you're probably wondering, as you're sitting and watching this, that this just takes a little bit of extra time to actually do all this. Well, there's two reasons why I'm doing it like this. First of all, this way it's very easy to understand. Okay, the way that I'm doing it here is so easy that it makes perfect sense. Okay, so now that we have this here, you can see that I can just do this here. Now, obviously, there's a ton of things we have to do before we make this to make this viable here. But you can see that it is indeed working. And then if you kind of make a mistake, it's like you accidentally drag this box to that. It doesn't quite, it works out quite well. All right, so that pretty much wraps that up and concludes the tutorial. Welcome everybody. Okay, so now what we need to do is when we go and play the game, you can see that we can add actually a little bit of a mechanic here. And the question is which one do you do of these first? Now, there's several ways that we can go and accomplish this. Instead of actually telling the person with words, we should simply use some way and some form of mechanic to actually make this go forward and to see which one they're going to use first. So let's say they want to do orange first. Okay. Well, when you set up this game here, what we should make happen is that you can't touch the other blocks, or else the other blocks will simply randomize. Well, there's actually a fairly easy way to do this. Now, first of all, we're going to go and we're going to deal with a concept called families. And families are essentially groups of sprites and groups of objects where you can have similar features here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in all of the drag objects here. And the family is going to be called drag family. Okay, there we go. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say if drag family is on collision with another object, and that's drag family. So if any part of the members collide with themselves, we're going to simply copy and actually paste this here. And I'm just saying because it's the exact same object we want to have happen, we're just going to simply randomize the location. We're going to say replace the object, and we're just going to go create drag family here. So let's take a look at that, how that works here. So I'm going to do that here. And there we go. That's actually really cool, but I think I copied the wrong one. In fact, I did copy the wrong one. You need to simply set the position instead of create an object. Although, one thing that I do love about game design is when you make happy accidents like that, it actually works out quite well. Because I just, as soon as I made that mistake, I actually thought of a cool other game to do that. So you can see here as I'm dropping this here, what it does is it randomizes the entire, it randomizes it here. So here I can do blue, right? I can do yellow. I can do purple, and then I have to do yellow again. And I'm going to do purple, like that. And you can see here that some of these are easier than others, okay? I have to kind of move it around the green, right? And so that is definitely a good way to show the player that you can go ahead and do that here. All right, I'll see you in the next tutorial. The game works quite well, but we can add in something else here. So what we can do is we can add in, we can essentially add in a delay, and that delay will delay the item from spawning again. So as you can see here, I'm just going to run that again because I don't think it worked here. So what I mean here is, like, for example, we do that and it instantly pops up around here. It instantly pops up. It instantly pops up, instantly pops up. We have to kind of move that over here. Instantly pops up. Instantly, kind of pops up again, and I accidentally touched that there. And you can see how this is kind of working here. Now, there's a couple of items you can do here. So first of all, we can add in a simple wait command. Okay. Before I do that, I'm going to actually add in. I'm going to right click and I'm going to add in global variable. I'm going to say wait to respawn drag block. Now, again, going with fantastically named variables, this is a good one. Wait to respawn drag block. I know exactly what it does, and I'm actually going to wait simply 3 seconds. Okay, and why am I doing this here? So first of all, I'm going to add in an action, and it's going to be wait here, and I'm just going to, and you can actually do that here. So we got wait, and I'm going to type in wait to respawn drag block, and you can type in a number here, and this number will be the number here. So I could say 3 seconds, but if I want to change all of these at once, I can simply put it in a variable, right? And I'll just say, there we go. And I can copy and I can paste this in here. I'm going to paste it. And I'm going to go over the logic in just a second here. So I'm going to paste it in here. And I'm also going to paste it right in here. So what it is like, let's say I need to change all of these here. I can just simply do it once. 4, 3, etc. Now, what this means here is that when we collision with the box here, we add 1 to score, we destroy the blue box, then we wait this amount of seconds, which happens to be 3, and then we respawn it. So let's run that and see how it works here. So we got 1, 2, and so it gives us a little bit of time here, which is actually kind of neat, right? And then you can see that it starts reappearing, and like, oh, you can't do that one. And we have to do this one, then this one, then this one, then this one, and you can see here that it's actually kind of cool. That little bit of a wait is actually quite neat. Okay, so let's hop back into here, and what I'll do is we will actually we can add in another option here, and that every, for example, 10 seconds, we just randomly take out the blocks here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a system, and we're going to say every X seconds. Now I'm just going to leave it at 1, but I'm going to create another global variable, because every time I see, for example, every 4 seconds, every kind of number, we can assign a variable to that, and I highly recommend that you do that. So what we'll do is we'll say random respawn time. Okay, and the initial value will be, let's say 10 seconds. Now 10 seconds sounds like a long time, but 15 seconds would probably be better. So we'll go random respawn time, and you can see here that Construct 2 actually has a fairly good GUI system where you can see that it is an actual world, and that is a variable here. So what do we need to do here? So we actually have all of the options here, right? And drag, and then drag again. Okay, and all it will do is it will do that here. Now, when you're testing, you don't have to actually do this. We'll actually just do 1 here. And I'm just going to do that here. So every 1 second, it's going to randomize, randomize, randomize. And that's actually really cool, right? And this creates a whole time dynamic. All of the variables and all of the mechanics that I'm adding in here are actually are pretty neat, and they deal with the time. Now, of course we have a long way to go with this, but let's run it and let's just kind of test it out here. We're going to do that here. We're just going to just kind of do this thing here, and then it's going to randomly, there we go. So it just kind of randomly did everything. And yeah, there we go. And if we wanted to, we could actually put in a respawn image or something like that. There we go, perfect. And it just respawns everything. Now what's kind of neat is I'm just going to hold this block for 10 seconds and see if it randomly redoes that here, and it does here. But if you move your finger around, it comes back to this. So this is actually something that's really cool. So if I'm moving this around and that 10-second thing comes up, nothing really happens, really. And that's actually really good. And the best part about this is that there's a lot of code in the back end that we didn't even have to deal with to make that possible. And that's why I use Construct too. That concludes the tutorial. All right, so now that we have all of the randomized features here, let's go ahead and let's add in some kind of bar here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually move all these up here. And while I'm at it, I will take this and I'll take the X position, which should be 186. Yes, and we'll make it actually 185. And I'm actually going to select all of these here. And I'm going to just say 185. Okay, and that's not the right one here. We'll just say 784, and we'll kind of just move all this down here. So now they're all at the same area here, and actually, just as that looks even cooler, we might actually do that here. And again, when you're making your apps, sometimes serendipitously, you might make a mistake. Like I didn't actually expect it to rotate that, but in the next tutorial, I'll show you something really cool with that. But in this tutorial, let's go ahead, let's add in a sprite. And this sprite is going to be, let's actually make it, we can make it a green. I think pink would be a good one, but blue. We'll make it a sky blue, and we'll just make it like that here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually move it just like this for a quick second. And I'm just going to keep track of these numbers here. So 977 and 10, actually the size here. So it's roughly 1800. So I'm going to do that here. Let's resize this here, and the width is going to be 1850, and the height is going to be, let's just say 50 here. Okay, I'm going to push OK, and that is going to be our little meter here. So we'll call this reshuffle meter. Okay, and what this is going to do is that this is slowly going to go down. Slowly going to go down to nothing, and then when it goes back to zero, it goes back here. And what that is supposed to show you is that is supposed to show you when the items are going to get reshuffled. Okay, and that's actually pretty neat here. So we'll just go down that, and I might as well look at all of these, and I'll just kind of move them down here. And I just have one other item. Let's just take a quick look at the background here, and I'm going to zoom in, and I'm just going to make sure that the background is just above there, just so that we don't get any weird ideas. All right, and so what this is going to do is I'm going to say system every tick. Okay, and this every tick accesses the game loop, and this game loop it's a loop that constantly moves, constantly gets refreshed. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add another global variable, and this is going to be meter. We'll call this meter size. Okay, and the meter size is going to be equal to this size here, so 1844. So meter size is 1844, and we can actually do a whole bunch of cool stuff with that here. But anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to say system, and we're going to subtract from meter size, and we're just simply subtract 1 here. Okay, and what this is going to do is that meter size is going to get 1 subtracted here, and I'm going to say we're going to go and to reshuffle meter, and we're going to do set width to meter size. Okay, and all this is going to do is if we run this right now, you can see that it's slowly going down, right? And you can see it's actually kind of moving in towards the center. Now, lots of people like to have it go in one way, but for example, it's like instead of it moving into the center, I think that moving into the center is actually quite a bit different, and I think it's quite a bit better. I'm going to refresh that here, and so there we go. That is part of what we need to do here, and we'll go and we'll talk about how to hook this up into the actual number in just a second. I'll see you in the next tutorial. So what we need to do now is we need to make sure that this bar here works as well as or it closes in 10 seconds. So how do we do that? Well, it's very simple. I'm going to go to System. I'm going to go to every X seconds, and I'm just going to make it 1 second. Now we don't need to add a variable here because we're simply going to make it 1 second here. And I'm going to go to subtract 1 from meter size. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it 18.4, and this is going to be 10%. Now, how did I get that number? Well, this number here is the reshuffle meter, and the size just happens to be 1844 and then 50, of course. So 10% of 1844, if you don't know this trick, you can simply move the decimal place 1 over, and if you move the decimal place 1 over, that is 10%, which is actually pretty cool. When you come to think about it. So if we do that here, what happens is that we have the subtract 10% every 10 and every 1 second. It's 10 seconds until that happens here, and then what we have to actually do is delete this here, and it will reset the width to every tick. So I'm just going to go ahead and run that here, and you can see that that moves down, and then it will respawn, right? And you can even kind of play around with this if you want. There we go. And then it goes the other way, which is kind of annoying. So what do we have to do here? So when we do this here, we have to go to reshuffle meter, and then we have to delete it. We have to destroy it. And the reason for this is actually a little bit odd. But when it goes all the way down to 0, the width is equal to 0. It's hard to put the width back up. If we only subtracted maybe 10%, we could put the width back on there. But since we can't do that, we need to go and reset it here. In fact, I'm just going to say I'm going to copy this position here, and then I'm going to go to System, Create Object, and the object we're going to create is reshuffled meter, and the X is going to be 968.4, and it's going to be 1041.7. Now, if you're off by a bit, does that really matter? Not really. So let's just go ahead and let's take a look at how that works here. So we got 10 seconds, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Bam. All right, and so what it does here is that it subtracts it, but what we need to do is we destroyed this object here, and we need to create the object as well. And meter size here has to also get reset. Okay, and in order to do that, we can just simply go to set value. Meter size is back to 1844. Okay, we'll go ahead and run that 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Now it starts off and it actually goes to that here. So what we can actually do is we can actually add in 10%, so we can multiply that by 1.1. That's just a little bit of an offset. So let's say 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And there we go. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Now, sometimes you have to do this. So what we've done here is that we've set the value to 84, but what happens is that every 10 seconds it will subtract 10%. So all I did was just simply add 10% on, and by adding 10%, I added it in its decimal form, which is technically 110%. I'll see you in the next tutorial. So in this tutorial, I think in the last tutorial, or a couple tutorials ago, I moved this to the side here. And while this looks actually really cool, right? And by the way, if you push shift, it kind of locks it to the side here. So let's just take a look at that angle here. It's 3, 2, 5. And what we're going to do is we're going to make all of these that angle. And I'm just going to simply we can actually do two things here. And I'm just going to add in a family. And all these are going to be is everything but the drag blocks here. So all of the blocks, okay? And I'm going to call this goal block family, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say we can do a couple things here. We can go and we can rotate the blocks here, or we can set it to a rotation first. So first of all, I'm just going to set it to a rotation. So I'm going to system, and then I'm going to go on start of layout. And what this is that this gets executed once. So when the layout gets started, you execute this code once. And I'm just going to go and I'm going to say the action is going to be goal block family, and then set angle. And that angle that I said earlier was 325. And what it's going to do is it's going to set all the families to 325. And that actually looks pretty neat. It looks, quite a bit different. Now, let's go ahead and let's hop back into Construct 2. And instead of doing that here, I think it would look better if we just simply rotated this. Rotation is the easiest form of animation. So I'll let you think about this. And what this means is that if you need to add movement in any kind of way, shape, or form to your game, rotation is not only the easiest to implement, but it is also the least computer taxing, meaning that it doesn't take a lot of power most of the time. So let's go ahead and let's say what we need to do is we need to say rotate clockwise, and we'll do 1. And of course this needs to be in the every tick, because remember, the every tick, this code that I've highlighted here will constantly get rerun, right? And you can see here that actually looks pretty cool, and it doesn't affect the gameplay at all. Okay, now we're going to actually be working with this here again. All right, and then we got this reshuffle, and then you can see that here like that. Yeah, it looks pretty cool, doesn't it? Right? And there we go. Green, blue, and then just like that here. So that actually looks really neat. The only problem is we do need to kind of change this bottom thing here. So in order to do that, let's just go and you can see it's 50. We're going to go and make it 25 because that's actually probably all we need here, and I think that works out quite well. Yeah, there we go. But we could probably move it down just a bit more, or we can simply move the rest of them up. We could probably move this down just a bit, and I think that's probably good. Let's just take a look. Yeah, close, but yeah, so we can just kind of drag these down, and there we go. See if we can get, and the trick is to get all of them within the item here. Now, since we moved it, okay, let's just take a look, and we're going to just, I believe it's 968 by 1056, and we just need to change this bottom line to 1056. All right, and I think that should work. And so yeah, we have that, and I'll just run it again, and barely narrowly touches, and we can kind of go and play the game. We can add in all kinds of cool little bonuses and combos to this, right? There we go, and there we go. Yeah, everything works out quite well. I'll see you in the next tutorial. Alright, so now that we have a decent game going here, and let's just run it and just see what's going on here. So we can kind of make this game work out quite well. And one thing that we can do is we can add the score to this game here. So how do we do that? Well, it's actually quite easy. Let's go, and I'm going to go and just make sure that my background is deselected here. And I'm going to select all of these and kind of move them down a bit. Now, I'm going to create another layer, and I'm going to call this HUD, which stands for Heads Up Display. And just for now, I'm going to lock the main layer and just work on the Heads Up Display. I'm going to double click, and I'm going to add in a text object here. And you can see that we have a nice text object here, and this is going to show you the score. Now, right away, we have to make some choices here. So first things first, I'm going to make the text white. And second thing is I'm going to make this much bigger. Okay, maybe 72. Let's take a look at how big that is. And you can kind of move it out here. 72 might be a bit too big, but 48 Might be just about right. There we go. Now let's talk a little bit about the fonts here. Now, not all the fonts are going to be able to work here, and the reason is that you have to make sure that your font is supported. Now, if you know the name of the font, then chances are it's supported. If you don't, that's also okay. One of my favorite fonts is this Bangers here, and you can see that that works out quite well. Let's go down, and another one of my favorites is Impact. So let's see if we can do that here. And you can actually just type in Impact, and we'll go with that here. And you can always change the size too. And it does take a little bit of time and a little bit of playing around to figure out which one you like, it works the best. Instead of text, we're going to go to score, just like that. And we can put the score up. It's not too difficult, just like that here. You can also change the horizontal alignment to center or left if you want. And you can change the hotspot to left here, which I think is a lot better. And that's where you would rotate it, by the way. Sounds pretty cool. And you can also see there's also wrapping there too. So here we go. We have the score. Let's hop into our event sheet and find our every tick event here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to text, set text, and we're just going to type in score within the quotes, by the way, and then colon space, and then I'm going to type in the at, and then I'm going to type in score. And so what this is going to do is this is going to print the word score, colon, and a space, and then it's going to print score. So that's pretty much all that we need to do here. Let's just take a quick look at how that looks. So bam, you see that we get this working here too. Now, this is kind of a bit of a happy mistake, but I wanted this to be white, and I actually wanted it to be like a really interesting color, like kind of like orange or something like that. But I actually think it looks better white. Okay, score looks pretty good there. And one reason why white would actually be a fantastic color for this is that you don't actually use white anywhere on the map here or anywhere in the game. So if you use this white here, it actually looks pretty cool. If you really wanted to, you could change the color up with a random number if you wanted to. But for now, I think that's actually pretty good. Now that we have the score, we can add in some other features that we can do with this here. I'll see you in the next tutorial. All right, so now that we have the score here, let's add in another one. And what I'm going to do, and before we do this, I'm going to call this txt score. And the reason why I'm going to call it txt score is that I sometimes like to put in the label or the type of object before. And I'm going to clone the object type here. And instead of score, I'm going to call this txt cycles. Now we're getting into the choice here where you can actually go and make your own game. And I highly recommend that you save your project as an independent file right now and try and make a different game that I'm about to make. And the reason for that is good entrepreneurs will, in fact, find a way to innovate in some way, shape, or form. In this case here, we're going to add in some cycles. So I'm going to say cycles, and I could call them iterations. But what we're going to do is we're going to say cycles, and then we can actually say remaining, right? Or you can say left, but remaining, like that there. And we need to just actually make this bigger here. So we got cycles remaining, and we have that there. And what that means here is that this is going to go down a total of a certain amount of times. We can make that 6 times. We can make it 9 times. The remaining cycles here is simply going to be every time that this goes through, we're going to subtract 1. So let's go ahead, let's add a variable. We'll call this cycle number, and then we'll start off with 9. So each iteration of this game that we're making is going to have 9 times. After, in this time where we reshuffle, we need to go and we need to change that. We're going to subtract from cycle number, and we're just going to simply add 1 here. Let's hop to the every tick here, and let's add in the txt cycles, and we're going to do set text, and we're going to call this cycles remaining colon space another quote. And by the way, everything that's within quotes usually usually is printed literally, and that means that if you whatever you print in the quotes will actually show up on the screen. And then in order to print the variable, you need to type in the and %, and then you need to type in cycle number. Okay, let's go and let's run that here. We got cycles remaining 9, and then once this goes down to 0, you'll see that it won't do that here, 8. And we'll have to add in the logic to make it work, so that once it goes down to 0, we can either reset the game or do something like that there. And so we got 7 cycles remaining. Now this mechanic works for so many different reasons. First of all, the game is really short, and that means that there's going to be space in between gameplay. And what's really cool about that is that your mind kind of resets and refreshes on a small little area. This is going to be a game where you're going to try and get the highest amount of score in the smallest amount of time. And essentially that's what it is. So it's going to be 9 cycles, and that's really 90 seconds. So it's a minute and a half of play. Now, what I like to think of this is kind of like going up skiing. So you ski down the mountain, and then you wait for the chairlift to bring you right back up to the top, and then you ski down again. A lot of games use that kind of feeling here, and use that kind of sensation where you go and you're in the game, you do something for a brief period of time, and then you have a wait period of time. And you can see that anywhere from small mobile games all the way up to AAA games. It's not action all the time. You need some juxtaposition to put that into reference here. Okay, so you can see here that we have cycles remaining 0, and we can make it actually, instead of being 90 seconds, it'd be 100 seconds, so it's a little over a minute, and I think that works out well. Now obviously we haven't set in anything else here, but I think that for the most part is good here. Now we do have to add in some other mechanics that makes it more interesting. That concludes the tutorial. So what happens when we get all of these items in let's say 10 seconds? So one of the best things you can do in a video game is if a player does something and achieves something, and this is one of the reasons I love games, by the way, is that games focus on achievement and and talent. And one thing you can do is, what happens if you get the purple, the blue, the green, the orange, yellow, and the purple all within that 10 seconds? You should get a bonus here. Okay, so how do we do that? How do we make sure that we go and do that here? Well, it gets kind of complicated, and we have to add in a ton of variables. Now, there's 2 places we can add in these variables here. We can add in variables to each of these individual items here, and the way we do that is add in these instance variables. Now, I don't like using instance variables as much as global variables. For whatever reason, if I need to access a variable at the global level, I might as well do it, right? But in this case, we're going to go, and since I haven't talked about instance variables, I am going to talk about them now. So what we'll do is we'll add in an instance variable here, and we'll say this is we're going to say that is collected. Okay, I'm going to copy that. Now we can technically make it a Boolean, but I like using the numbers in Construct 2. The Boolean logic's a little bit weird. So I'm going to do is collected, and I'm just going to do that for all of these here. And is collected, and then we're going to go to variables is collected, and then is collected, and is collected. So there we go. Now that we have that there, let's hop up all the way to the top here, and when we go and we drag the blue blocks into the collision, we're going to go to our goal blocks, and we're going to go to the blue box, and we're going to say set value is collected to 1. Okay, and I'm going to copy all of that and paste it in each single one of these here. And by the way, even though this project works this way, and doesn't mean that your project might not be set up this way. What I mean by what I'm about to say is that you can see how everything that I'm doing is color coded, and color coding, especially when you're making the first app and whatnot, is actually a really good idea. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace the object, and we're just going to replace it to green block. Now you can only do it this way if the name of that instance variable, the one that we just set up, is the same. If it's different, you won't be able to replace the object like this, right? And then that's why I copied and pasted it in there. Right, and there we go. So what that means is that we set is collected to 1 here. Now I'm going to go and I'm actually going to push the control button here, and I'm going to copy all of this. Okay, copy, and then I'm going to simply go into here and paste it. And instead of 1, I'm going to make it 0. So what happens here is that this will reset the entire game, right? And once this resets the entire game, we need to reset all these variables too. Now you're probably thinking, well, oh, this is so much work. But when it comes to resetting your game and pausing your game, there's actually quite a bit of work involved, especially in the mobile space. In fact, a fun little fact about the early days of mobile and the iPhone development, a lot of times you would never destroy an object because it would take up too much CPU power. So what you would do instead is you just move it off screen. So that's important here. Okay, so now that we have all of this here, we need to set one other piece of logic up. So we're going to say if, and then we're going to say blue block compare instance variable is collected is equal to 1, and we're going to copy and paste this 6 times. And I'm going to replace the object here. So what we're comparing is we're comparing all of these blocks here. And we're comparing the instance variables to see if you've collected. Because remember, when you drag the box, the little box into, so if you drag this little box into here, it will set goal collected to be 1 here. So replace object, and then we go to purple, and then one more here will go to simply yellow. Okay, now of course we need an action here, and for now let's just do score. We'll do set well, what we can do is we could add to score, and we'll add 10. So it's a pretty significant advantage. Okay, so let's see if I can do this. 3, and then this should be it. All right, and for some reason it didn't quite work here. But we'll take a look at that. And so if all of these are indeed equal to 1, then it should add 10 to, of course, not the cycle number. We need the score. So it almost worked. So let's try this again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and bam. Okay, look at that. Another problem here. So let's just take a quick look at that. So if is collected is equal to 1, then we add 10 to score. What we then have to do is simply add and set that back. Because what happens here is that when all of these are equal to 1, then it's going to just constantly add 10 to score. All right, so let's do that again, and let's see if that works here. And then this should be it. Yeah, indeed it did work. And so now everything is reset, and you can do it again and again and again, which is really cool. Now, again, if you take a look at this, if I just reset this, you have a maximum of getting 6 points if you just do whatever you want, but you get a ton of bonus if you do them, if you get all the different colors before the time runs out. That's a pretty neat mechanic. That concludes the tutorial. Another thing we can do is we can add in a bonus here. So if I just refresh this here, once we get the entire, we do everything within the cycle here, we can add in a little bonus, okay? And this bonus here will just say bonus 10 or like plus 10 or something like that. And we can easily do that. Now let's go and figure out how we do that. Well, it's very simple actually. I'm going to go and I'm actually just going to clone this object type here. And I'm just going to hide this HUD for a second, and just it's always good to kind of take a look at your layers and see if you're on the right layer, because tons of times I've actually been making the wrong layer here. So I'm going to make this actually pretty big. Okay, something like that, and something closer to the top here. And we're going to do the center, and instead of cycles remaining, we'll call this bonus plus 10. Okay, and maybe the exclamation point's a bit too much. Bonus plus 10. And I think the player knows what that means. And the size will make, let's say 250. This might be too much. It is too much. So you do have to change the size up a bit, 200. And let's just see where we're at here in terms of size. Okay, bonus plus 10. So actually that's kind of the size I wanted. All right. And yeah, there we go. So bonus plus 10. Let's just take a look at how that looks. Yeah, and actually that looks pretty cool. I like it. In fact, I do really enjoy the white, which is quite nice. We might change this up later, but the white as a graphic user interface, because it contrasts the dark so much, and there's nothing else, no other color used like that in the game. It actually works out pretty well. Now, one thing I really wish is if you could add in a border around the words. That would, when you do that, it kind of makes it pop out a bit more. So anyway, bonus here, and what we'll do is we'll call it and we'll put it in here, and the position here is going to be 6 and 292. So just move that in here, and what we'll do is we'll say txt, and it was cycles to set position to 6 and 292. Okay, and what that will do is that once we get everything in there, it will just move everything over. So if we just do this here, looks pretty neat, not too hard, and then bam, bonus plus 10. And you see here that obviously it doesn't do anything there. And so what we can do here is we can actually go to wait, and we'll wait, let's say 2 seconds. 2 seconds is actually quite a bit of time. We'll wait 2 seconds, and then we will actually copy and paste this here, and we'll set this something to way back out here. And so we got minus 12, and then let's say minus 500. So let's just go ahead and let's say minus 12 and minus 500. And so that will set it back to that position. So let's just run the layout here. So we got 1, 2, 3, bum, ba, da, da, da. And there we go, bonus plus 10, and then it moves it away. Pretty cool, right? Now there's a whole bunch of things that we can do here. We can like fade it out, fade it in, etc. But we'll just wait till the next cycle, and I'll see if I can beat my own game here. And actually playing your own game is good, but it's also a little bit detrimental too, just because you want to make sure that, all right, so I think I can get this. Bam. Okay, bonus plus 10, and then it moves away there. Now there's a couple things you can do to make this a little bit more cool. I actually kind of like the bonus just coming up like that. One thing I actually do is you can go to txt cycles, and we should probably change that right now. So we're going to call this txt bonus, just like that. And the bonus plus 10 is going to say once that's created, so txt bonus, and we're going to go on created. So once it's created, in fact, usually I create the object, but since we're moving it to position, so we're going to actually just go txt compare x, okay, and if the x is equal to 6, and then if we push C to add another condition, and then we're going to put compare y is equal to 292, okay, and that means that when that object is moved to this location here, we can go and simply we can say the txt bonus here, or txt cycles, the bonus here, and yeah, just making sure it is the bonus here, we can move at angle, okay, and that angle is going to be, I believe it's 270, and 270 is rotating to the top, and since it's 270, it will move 1 pixel. So if we run it here and we kind of do this, I already know what it's going to do. It's not going to work the way I want it to, okay? And it just kind of stays there and then goes away. But what we can also do is if we say if x, and it's the y that we're considering, right? And the y, let's see, is is it greater than or less than? Yeah, it's less than or equal to. So if the y is less than or equal to, it will move it up. So let's just do this again. And you see how I'm testing a lot? It's really important. There we go. You can kind of move it up to whatever you want here. It's up to you. And if you want to move it faster, you can just move it more than 1 pixel. You can move it, let's say, this is gonna move real fast. So let's just do that again. 3, 4, boom. Okay, there we go. And yeah, that's pretty much how it works here. Personally, I just like it moving on and off the screen, but some people like to do that. That concludes the tutorial. We're getting closer to finishing this project. Now, there's one major, very simple change that we can actually do with this here. And instead of having these as blocks, we can have them as circles, which actually looks kind of cool. But in order to do that, we need to actually go make a circle in, let's say, something like Photoshop. So what we have to do is we're going to go and we're going to save this here. We're going to call this purple block. And I'm actually just going to copy the word block. And what that will do is that will save it to the desktop here. So it's a little tedious, but I'll call this blue block, just like that. And this one will be green block. This one will be orange block. This one will be yellow block. And we won't be using these for very long, by the way. And then I believe actually we already have, I'm going to change this to pink block. By the way, I'm pushing F2 here. And I'm going to simply call this purple block. Now that all looks nice here. Now I'm just going to pull up Photoshop. And I'm going to open all of these here. Just open them up. So nothing too fantastic here. Now I'm just going to see how big this is, and I'm going to go to image size, and it's 130 by 130. So I'm going to go to File, New, and I'm going to make it 130 by 130. Now you're probably wondering, why did I do this? Well, first of all, let me go and resize this accordingly so that you can see everything. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a background here, and I'm also going to select the round marquee tool. Now let's move in, and I'm pushing Alt, by the way, and I'm going to go to the corner, and this might take a couple seconds to actually get correct. So I'm just going to simply move in here, and I'm going to go and push I to make the eyedropper, and I'm going to hop over here, push G, and I'm going to make that circle here. I'm going to make 6 more of these here and do the exact same process. Okay, make sure it's still selected, and all we're doing here is we're making the colors the same as we're just making the colors the same as the blocks within the game, and that way we can simply make that out here. And I'm using G, by the way. G will use the paint bucket tool, and it will be a lot easier. Okay, there we go. And then I'm going to just simply do that in here. So now we have all the buttons here, and if we go to 100%, looks like a nice big circle here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to save these all here. So I'm going to go to File, and actually I'm going to push Alt Control Shift S, and that will bring up the Save for Web, and this will automatically save it. And so I'm going to actually go and save this to each of the blocks here, and I'm just going to go Replace, and I'm just going to do the exact same thing here, and this will save it to a PNG for you. and it will be a lot easier than if you were to, kind of save it manually. So I'm just going to save it in here, and you can see the workflow is actually pretty simple, and it's pretty easy. And using the keyboard commands, they makes efficiency quite nice. And again, any time that you can make your efficiency for your games easier, then I say do it, because it is much better here. Let's hop back into Construct 2, and then let's go and change this up here. So we're just going to do pink block, and all this is going to be is it's going to be the exact same thing, except they're circles now. Now, was this necessary? The answer is that could be up to you. Blocks actually don't work too bad here. It actually works out as a very good aesthetic for both. However, I like the circles because it signifies automatically to the player that you're supposed to be doing something else with this, right? They're not the same things. And the fact that the other ones are rotating are actually pretty good too. So I believe this was yellow. And yeah, so we got one more, and it's simply purple. There we go. And that actually looks pretty cool. Now let's go ahead and let's run it here. And this, I say, looks quite a bit better. I like the juxtaposition in between this here. All right. Now, as a side note, and if you want to do this, right? And then there we go, bonus 10. And yeah, I have to say that this is a very simple looking game, but I think it looks pretty awesome. That concludes the tutorial. Welcome back, everybody. Okay, so now what we need to do is we can go and actually make these a little bit nicer than they currently are. So first things first, let's go and let's hop into Photoshop here, and we need to find out how big these are. So the size is 200 by 200. So let's go and let's create a new project here, and we'll go 200 by 200 pixels, of course. And we'll go and create a new one of these here. So what I'll do is I'll push I for the pink block, and I will go and I will select the rounded rectangle tool here, and I'll zoom in just a bit so I can just kind of, and I'll make sure that it's right on the edge here. And it's kind of tricky, and this is easier in Adobe Illustrator. Okay, now you can see here that we have the width and the height, and you can see that you can kind of take this to pretty much whatever you want for a border. But you can see also right down here is if you change the rounded rectangle radius, you can change it to whatever you want. And if you put it up really high, it ends up becoming a circle, which I think is kind of neat. But this is probably about right. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy this 6 times. So I just drag it down here, and I'll push shift and then drag it down again, and then drag it down again. Now what we need to do is we need to click on this here, and we can go, and there's 2 options we can do. We can simply fill it in, or we can simply fill it in, or we can go and change the settings here. I'm going to fill it in, and before I do that, I'm just going to go right click and rasterize layers, and what that's going to do is that is simply going to change it so that they are in fact completely editable from a pixel point of view. So we'll just go and we will go side by side, and simply put just pushing green here, G here to use the paint can, and I just going down one by one, and 2 more, I believe. And purple block. And I believe that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, and then we have 6 here. G, we'll just put that in there. And that actually works out quite well. And I will undo that here. And what we'll do is we'll save everything, and we'll just simply save this as purple purple, and then I'm going to type in goal. I'm going to copy that, and then Control Alt Shift S brings up this web view here. We'll go yellow goal, and then likewise here, I'm just moving it up one by one. Save it here. We're going to go to orange goal, and then we're going to go green goal. Almost there. We're going to go blue goal, and one more. Of course, we got pink goal, just like that here. Let's hop back into Construct 2, and then let's go, and all we need to do is simply replace them here. It's actually pretty cool, and we'll just go to pink goal, just like that, and we'll do the same thing here with the blue goal, just like that, and we'll do the same thing here. And you can see that this is actually pretty neat, and it does look a little bit more refined. Okay, I think if you don't like it, you can keep it the way it is, but just adding in that little bit of extra detail can mean the difference between a very good game and just an average game. Okay, so here we go. We see we have these here, and they actually look quite neat. I'll see you in the next tutorial. Okay, so we're getting get there here, and let's just take a look at see how this looks. Yeah, and I think that actually looks pretty cool. It does look a bit different, and you want to make sure that and I didn't make that here, so we need to make sure that we do this all correctly. And then I think this will give me the bonus. There we go, bonus 10. And I think that actually looks really cool. And the fact that these are rounded kind of makes it look a little bit neater. I think it looks really cool, and the circles here. And you can see that a really simple concept can actually turn out to be really neat. All right, I do enjoy the impact there. And let's go ahead and let's show the people that they have has been kind of a reshuffle. Okay, so I'm going to move this in here, and I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, and I'm going to call this reshuffle. Okay, reshuffle like that, and I'm going to put it into the center, and on top of this we'll make it 72. That's a little big, but it's probably the right size. There we go. And we'll just kind of move it in here. And by the way, if you want to set the position to be exactly half, what you can do is bring up your old trusty calculator, go 1920 divided by 2, which is indeed 960, and you can see that here, the position here would technically be 960 if you wanted to, but we need to make sure that it's along this axis, and 1080 divided by 2 is 540. So we'll just say this is 540, and that is perfectly centered here. Now we're going to call this txt reshuffle, like this. And what this is going to do is that this is going to pop on the screen every time it reshuffles. Okay. Now, first things first, I'm actually going to just actually remember this here. We have 638 and 540. So we're pretty much going to do the same thing here, and it's going to be, and before I forget, it's going to be this one here. It's going to be x is 540 and 648, and replace the object with txt reshuffle. Okay, and I'm just going to paste that in here, and we'll just, it doesn't really matter what it is. It's minus 12, minus 500, just so we get it out of the way. So we'll run this here, and we'll get our bonus. And then you got to make sure though, and then you see that there's a reshuffle there, and it's probably because it's in the wrong spot. What we want to do is have this up in here, and then I'm going to copy the weight and we'll wait maybe 1 second this time, and I'm going to move this here. So this is when we reshuffle it. So it's always good to double check, and you can see that by testing you can simply make human errors, and we see we got bonus plus 10, and there we go. And we got the yellow, the pink, green, blue, yellow, and there we go, bonus plus 10. And then it should say the reshuffle. Yeah, reshuffle, and then it goes away. Now, 1 second is actually a little bit too slow. I'm actually going to go 1.5. Let's just see how that looks. All right, and we'll just take a couple seconds here, and we can get the bonus too. There we go. Green, yellow, and then purple. Reshuffle. There we go. That's perfect. And so now the user definitely knows that there. Now, just as kind of a just as kind of a thing here, when we run this, some of these get put up in behind here, just like that. And we need to go and we need to make sure that the top value of this shouldn't be too much here. So let's go and let's take a look at the random here. So the random position is 100 and 700. And then you can see here it's the X, and we're looking for the Y here. Let's actually go to 180, okay? And we'll just go and we'll add this in here, and we'll simply go, and all we have to do is change this to 180. And it's just little things like that so that it doesn't conflict with the graphic user interface. It will make your game just feel a lot better. It looks like a little sloppy when that happens. So we just need to go and do that here. And one thing you can do is, this is why you set variables for numbers. Now, most of the time when I'm setting up randoms, I seldom put variables in here, but it's actually not a bad idea. What I do instead is I just kind of deal with it, and most of the time the random numbers that I do put in there are pretty good, but sometimes they don't necessarily work. All right, so I think that's about it. So let's go ahead and let's run that layout again, and you can see that probably does work out the way we want it to. And then we got the bonus, sweet. Okay, and then we got that orange, and then reshuffle, and then everything. And that reshuffle actually really really kind of looks good here. But you can see here that that the reshuffle it definitely works a little bit better here. Now let's just take a look at this here. So we got 180, and we're just trying to see if there's anything else that we need to set there. And no, I think oh yeah, we do have to set these up here. That's what we're looking for. And so they should be along in the and I'm just copying and pasting, by the way, so it should be still in the clipboard. I'm just going to go and simply put that in there, just like that, and two more, and one more. There we go. And that way everything looks a bit nicer. That concludes the tutorial. Alright, so we have a lot of the functionality already made here, and this actually works pretty good. There's one major problem that I like to address here, and it's when the reshuffle happens. So it says reshuffle, and it automatically just kind of moves. Now, this might be a little bit jarring. When you move something without any kind of animation, the user can get a little disoriented. So let's hop back into Construct 2, and let's just work with this first purple one here first. So what do we need to do with this here? Well, it's actually quite simple. Okay, when we go and when we respawn it, so for example, when we respawn it, it will go and it will trigger something here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in something called a function. Now, if you've ever programmed before that, and this programming hasn't been within like a visual programming language like GameSolid or Construct 2, you'll probably come across a function. And there's a function is supposed to be a place where you can put your code, but what a function really does is you put in an input and it puts something out. It does a little bit of mathematical work for you. That's the whole point of a function. And what and if you're into JavaScript, some people like to think of a function as just a place to put your code, and that's pretty much what this is going to be in Construct 2. So now that we have this here, we have all of this, and we're going to go and we're going to say we're going to essentially make the this purple here first of all go and start at a small position and kind of grow into it. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, let's go and let's say purple block, and we're going to go set scale. Okay, and I'm going to put the scale to 0.01. And we have to make sure that we're putting it all the way up at the top here. And because you can see that there is this wait 1 second here. So if I go and I run this here, when it counts down to 10, it's going to go and change this the scale of this purple here. Now this is a multi-step process here, okay? But for the most part, you can see that this purple here, in fact, the pink and the purple here is really, really small. So let's hop back into Construct 2. Let's actually choose a different one other than the purple. Let's choose the blue. Okay, so the blue is set to 0.01. Now what we can also do is, now that we have this to 0.01, let's go and hop into the blue and let's make an instance variable. And this instance variable is going to be scale. Okay, and the initial value is going to be 0.1. And what this is going to do is that this is going to grow by that here. So watch this. If I say, if system, or if I say if, and we're going to compare an instance variable here, and we have to pick the right object here. So the blue object, if we're going to go and compare scale is less than or equal to 1, okay, then we're going to add scale to scale. So watch this here. So we're going to go to the blue here, and we're going to go add to add 0.1 to scale, and we're also going to go and we're going to go set scale to scale. Okay, and in order to do that, you need to do self.scale, and there we go. So we'll go ahead and we'll do that here. And so what this is going to do is that this sets the scale to 0.01, and then it will add 1 to scale here. Okay, and let's just see if that works, because sometimes, so you can see there that actually did quite work here, right? And what it'll do is it will reset this to happen again. Okay, and then you can see it didn't quite work. Okay, if we refresh this here, it works the first time, but then you're like, okay, wait a minute, that doesn't quite work. So what happened here? So there's two things you can do. We're going to go, what we could do is we could actually go and set scale. So set value of scale to 0.1. And I'm just going to move that up here. Okay, and so I'm going to run that again, and then we'll wait 10 seconds, and then it will go and it will set here. So you see that to 1, there we go, 2, 3, 2, 1, and it'll take 10 seconds to do that. And then we'll do that here. There we go. And so you could probably get away without setting this scale in here. So let's just try that again. There we go. And it will do that here. But you can see that little animation here actually isn't too bad. Now it's a little quick, right? All right, there we go. And we'll just wait another 10 seconds for it to go. And it'll just take a couple seconds, and it should work here. Now keep in mind we have to do this for all the other ones here too, right? There we go. And there we go. 2, 1. Just take a couple seconds. There we go. So not so bad, but if we actually made it 0.01 and 0.01, and then we actually did the same thing here, 0.01, you'll see that it actually works a little bit better, right? not bad, a little slow. So let's actually do something in between. 0.5. So it was half as fast as the other one here. So we'll do 0.5, and you can go and you can go, and there we go. I think that's perfect. Now I could of course tweak this, maybe 0.25, and if this doesn't work, we'll go to 0.4. All right, there we go. And you can see that little animation here actually isn't so bad. What's actually cool though is if I grab this and I still do it here. So right, you can see that it does actually do the animation there, which is actually kind of cool. All right, I'll see you in the next tutorial. All right, so now that we have this working with one bubble, we have to work it with all the other bubbles. Now, there's another problem, and that the other problem is that when we go and destroy the bubble, it will respawn in 3 seconds here. And in this case, it actually did work. Okay, and you can see it there. It actually does work. But the problem with this is that even though it does kind of work, it does set it to the respawn time. It doesn't work the way that I'd want it to, and even though it's working now, the problem is that we need to have a little bit of a failsafe. So like that function I added in the last tutorial, we're going to add in a function that says, we'll say on function, and we'll call this grow circles. Okay, circles like this. Okay, and we also need that within 2 quotes like that, and we'll go ahead and push done here. Now, what I'll do is I will cut this out of here, and I will paste this in grow circles. And what we'll do is we'll call a function, and that function will be grow circles, and there we go. And you can see here that it actually puts it in there for you. So it will call the function grow circles. And so what it does is that every time it randomly spawns, it's going to send the computer and the compiler to this grow circles here. Now what I'm going to do is we're going to have to copy and paste this here. However, none of these other circles have an instance variable of scale. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add this in here, and I'm just going to type in scale, and I'll do 0.1. And we have to add this in for all of these. And by the way, I am using my keyboard as much as I possibly can, tabbing in between 2, using the numpad and pushing escape. That way you can get this done a little bit quicker. So I'll do scale and 0.1, enter and escape. There we go. And we'll do the same thing here. Now, the instance variable, if you want to replace the object, is going to have the exact same. It's going to have the exact same variable name, and that does mean that scale and scale with a capital S are different. So we have this. We have all of these dots here are essentially the same because now they have the instance variable. If they didn't, if one of these didn't have this instance variable right here, then it would be technically different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and replace this object here, and I'm just going to replace this in alphabetical order, and it's not really that. Got 2 more here, and purple, and we got 1 more, and that's going to be yellow, just like that here. So what that's going to do is that's going to put the scale here. Okay, and now what we have to do is if we run it, watch what happens. So that one works. We kind of let it go down, and then it comes back. But watch what happens to the other ones. Okay, nothing really happens. Well, there's a good reason on why that doesn't happen here. Is that we set the scale to 0.25, and we technically call it. But what we don't do is we don't set everything so that that the scale here works accordingly. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to replace this object here, and I'm just going to replace it with the green object here. Now, you also have to replace both of these 2 objects, so I'm just going to replace them with the same one here. And you essentially have to do this with all of them. So we'll go orange, and pink, and we'll do the same thing with purple here. And then we'll also do this with yellow. Now, am I missing one? It seems like I'm missing one here. Let's just take a quick look here. Okay, so we got blue, green, 1, 2, 3, 4. No, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, yes. Yes, in fact, here's the problem. So that, and then we also need one more here. So we're going to go pink, and then these have to be pink. I knew I was forgetting one. And it's always good to double check. So I'm going to go ahead and run that here. And there we go. So we can kind of drop these all in, and we'll just test it out just to see if it works. And there we go. Doesn't that look a way, way better? All right. And there we go. Okay. Not bad. And then it will reshuffle again, and you'll see how that works. Okay. And that just looks a lot better. It gives the user a cue, and that cue is that, is that something has happened. Before, it was kind of a little bit too hard. All right, I'll see you in the next tutorial. So there's a couple of problems with our code so far. So one thing is that if we drag and drop this, it kind of just randomly puts it here. Okay, so that's actually kind of neat. It's kind of a neat thing here, but you can see that it reshuffles, and it ends up with the right amount of it plays the animation. So what do we need to do here? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy all of these, everything in here in grow circles, and I'm just going to paste it on this drag and drop here. And I'm going to put the corresponding color with the corresponding drag and drop. And what this is going to do is it's going to set the scale. And remember that if the scale is lower than 1, it's going to set the scale of everything there. So I'm going to go with that, run it here, and you can see when it randomly spawns, it makes a little bit more sense. Now the other problem is that when I kind of move it around, right, you can see that it does have that kind of jarring, flashy look. So what we have to do again is we have to make sure that we put it in all the way up top here. So on collision, and then if we have a collision with the drag family here, what we'll have to do is we'll have to put in to make sure that the appropriate scale gets put in. Now, families work a little bit different here. Now, let's go ahead and let's add in the family instance variable here. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to say scale, and we're going to add it to 0.1 here. And then you can see here that the name is already used in this family. So you can't use scale, but what we can do is we can call this family scale, just like that. And so what we'll do is when we drag and we collide with another, we're going to go to drag family, and we're going to go to set value, and then we're going to go put family scale to 0.0025. Okay, so let's just go ahead and run that, and you'll see what happens here. Okay, nothing, it kind of, we drop it here, but what we need to do is we need to set the scale so that it does, in fact, when you move it around, it does indeed change here. So let's hop back into construct 2, and it says we'll put drag family here, and I'm just going to copy this bottom here, and I'm going to replace this object, and what we might actually have to do is the replace object isn't going to work, so we're going to have to do compare instance variable, and if family scale is less than or equal to 1, okay, and then we're going to simply go, and I'm just going to do that here. So we're going to do, it's going to be the exact same. We're going to go scale. We're going to set scale to self.family scale, and that's, remember, how you access the variables of the family. You have to do self first. It's kind of annoying, but that's just what you have to do. And then what we'll have to do is go drag family. We're going to go to add, and it's going to be family scale. We're going to go to 0.025. So it's exactly the same thing here. Let's take a quick look at that here. And we'll go and we'll just see that here. And I move that here. And you can see that they both kind of move, which is kind of neat, right? So I move it, move it, move it, move it, move it. And they both kind of do, which is kind of cool, which is kind of neat there, okay? And that you can see just looks so much better. So much better. Okay, there we go. I'll see you in the next tutorial. So we're almost done here with this animation here. Now the only problem with this is that you see when I move and I kind of move it with the other object here, my the circle here technically it reanimates. Now that on the computer might not necessarily be a problem. However, if this, however, was on a touch screen, your finger and the touch resolution is not as precise as the mouse. Remember that. So how do we do that here? Well, we need to go, and we're going to need to go to drag family here. Now we're going to go to family behaviors, and you can see that there is this drag and drop too. You can go ahead and add it there if it's not already there. So drag and drop to, and what that means is that if we go to drag family and we say if is dragging, so if any member of the family is dragging, okay, then we can go to we can simply set the scale, and I'm going to copy this here. I'm going to set the scale to 1. So what that should do is I can move this all around, and you can see that the actual circle that I'm dragging around isn't changing at all. The other ones are, but this one is not. And that's actually really, really important. Okay, so there we go, and that actually works quite well. And you can go and kind of play the game as much as you want, and then, you know, there we go. Perfect. Yeah. So that actually looks quite a bit. That actually looks great here. And yeah, there we go. I'll see you in the next tutorial. Welcome everybody. Okay, so now what we need to do is we have the game and it works, but watch what happens when the cycles go back to -1. Well, we haven't actually added in a game over logic yet here. So before we do that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to call this game screen. Okay, and then we're going to call this event sheet. We can call this game sheet. And that way we know that it's a game sheet right there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new layout, and I'm going to call and add in a new event sheet. And this layout is going to be called game over screen, and then this is going to be called game over sheet. Okay, just like that there. Now I'm going to zoom out just a bit, and we're going to hop in and put in the background here. Now when you go to the new screen here, you have to set up the layers again. There is a way to make sure that there is inherited layers, but what that means is that an inherited layer is where you can set up a layer, and it can be persistent across all layouts. But this program isn't exactly big enough for us to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to also change this to 1920 by 1080, and that way we get our nice little screen there. And then I think that actually probably should work just like that. I'm going to hop back into layers here, put that closed down here, and I'm just going to call this game layer. Now let's go and let's add in a text box here. And actually, one thing that actually might be good is to take this bonus here, and we can actually go and clone that object type, push Command X, and then Command V here. And you're probably wondering what we're doing here. Just take a quick look here. So we're going to call this txt game over, and then we're just going to go ahead and type in game over like that. And we could probably even make it a little bit bigger. We could probably make it, let's say 250. And let's see if we can get that in there. Yeah. And this is going to be, one thing I like to do is make big block letters and big block, something that's pretty big. So I'm actually going to go 325, and that's a little bit too big. In fact, probably 290 or 300 will be even a bit better. And there we go. Now, if we go ahead and push run here, you can see that this is what it will look like, and game over looks pretty good. We just need to nudge it over just a bit. Okay, there we go. And what we can also do is we can actually type in txt. We can put the score in here as well, and if we wanted to, just like that here. So let's go ahead and let's run the layout here, and it should print the score, but we haven't actually have done that yet. So in order to actually make this score work, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to say, I'm going to find the score here, and I'm going to go clone object type, and I'm going to push Command X and put it back in here. And this clone object type here, we're going to call this txt score game over. And that way we know which one it is. So we can put the score just like that, and we'll make it a little bit bigger. We can make it probably, let's say it's 75. Yeah, that's a good size here. We got the score, and we got the game sheet here, and the game over sheet. What we're going to do is we're going to go to system, and we can actually get away with every tick. We can technically do both on start of layout or every tick. We're going to go to game txt game score. We're going to go to set text here, and we're going to just say, yeah, set text, and the text of course is going to be score within the quotes, and then we're going to type in an ampersand, and then we're going to type in score. So what will have happen here is that when we run this here, it will print the score. Okay, let's hop back into Construct 2 over here, kind of move that here, and I'm going to actually clone this again, and we'll call this txt best. Okay, and for here we'll call this best score, colon space, and what we'll also do is we'll do the same thing here. I'm going to copy and paste that. I'm going to replace this object here with txt best, and then we're going to call this best score. And remember, inside the quotes it prints it literally, and then we're going to go type in fact, we don't have a best score yet, so I'm going to add in a global variable, and I'm going to call this best score. Or you can type it score best, and that way all the score variables will show up alphabetically. And we'll go score best. There we go. And then it should be 0 now. If we run it, you can see we got score best over here. Let's just do a little bit of housekeeping before we wrap up this tutorial here. We got the position, and I think that position looks pretty good. We could probably move it here. We'll say it's 485. For this one here, we're just going to make this one 485 as well, so they're all along the same here. All right, let's take a look at adding in a couple of sprites here, and we can actually add in our own sprites here, and we'll do that in the next tutorial. I'll see you then. So now what we need to do is we need to add in, when the cycles get down to 0, we need to move over to the game over screen. It's actually fairly easy to do. Let's hop over to our game sheet here. Let's go to System, and we'll go to Compare Variable, and we'll say cycle number is simply less than 0. Just like that. Now, one thing that I like to do is I always like to put less than or equal to, and you can either make it less than or equal to 0, or you can make it less than or equal to -1. It's up to you what you want to do. When it comes to logic, you want to make sure that you just take an extra couple seconds to make sure that it's the correct logic here. So if cycle number is less than 0, then we're going to simply go to layout, and that layout is game over screen. Let's just change the variable. It's up top here from 9 to 1 here, so we're not waiting so long. So we got one cycle left. We can even play the game if we want to. Pretty cool. Everything looks kind of nice. And then we got 0. And then you have, it's up to you whether you want to actually have that 0 or not. see if I get it. There we go. I got it again. Okay. So you see there, it goes back to game over. Now there's a problem, and that problem here is that there isn't any buttons. Okay. So let's hop back into here. And so what are we going to do for our buttons? Well, we're going to go and we're going to have to make our buttons in Photoshop here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to clone this object type, and I'm just going to undo that here. I'm going to paste it in there. And don't worry, this will actually be something important here. So I'm going to take clone it and then push Control X. And remember when I'm doing that, all it means is that I'm cloning the object type here, and you can't just simply copy and paste it. You have to literally clone it. And there we go. All right. So what this is going to be, play again, more games, and then Twitter and whatnot. All right, so I'm just going to go and I'm actually just going to move it out like this. Okay, and the size is actually going to be 500 by 200. Likewise with this one, and I know that I'm stretching it by right now, but don't worry about that quite yet. This is just kind of a preliminary round here, so we'll just kind of do that here. So this will be play again, and I'll call this BTN play again. This one will be BTN more games, and then this one here will be BTN Twitter. All right, and I'm going to go over each of these buttons in its own individual tutorial. I'll see you then. Welcome back. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to make these buttons do something here. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click, and we have the goal blocks in here. What we need to do is, since we copied it, it's going to be all these buttons here are in the in the block here. So I'm just going to move them out first of all, and we can once we add more buttons in here. So we're going to go button play again, and actually we're going to go to touch, and then it's going to be on touched object, and that object is going to be button play again. So what we need to do is reset all of the global variables. Now it's going to be a little bit interesting if we do it this way, because the score best will also get reset. So what you have to do is you have to reset all of your global variables manually, and in that case we're going to have to put cycle number, and I'm just going to put that back up to 9 here. So we got cycle number, and then pretty much that's the only one we have to do here, and score. Yeah, cycle number and score. So resetting can actually take quite a bit of time here, so we're going to put cycle number back to 9, because remember we've counted it down, and then the same thing here is going to be for score, and then we're going to say score. All right, so we're going to make that equal to 0, and there we go. And what we're also going to do is we're going to go to layout, and this layout is of course going to be game screen. Okay, and actually just I was a little bit premature of setting this up here. Let's go ahead and let's kind of just play this here, and what should happen here is everything should work out quite nicely, and then we're almost there. 10 seconds, and it's a good time to actually play your game too, just in case you pick up any bugs while you enter this in here. Okay, so game over, score, and then we need to have the best score functionality here, and you can see that everything gets put up the way it is. So let's add in that best score functionality, and so I'm going to go to system, and we're going to go on start of layout, and we're going to say system set value of best score, or score best, to simply score. Okay, but you're thinking, and some of you already know this, but if, for example, we're going to say we're going to have to add another condition in here. So we're going to say condition, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to click on this and push the C button for condition, or you can do a sub condition, which will go below it, but we're just going to push C for condition, and we're going to say system if score best is less than score. So if on the starter layout is score best is less than score, we're going to set score best to score. So score has to be higher. So let's go ahead and let's run that here. And so let's just go and play the game. Should be pretty simple here. And not too complicated. Just like this. And there we go. And we got one more of these to do. Perfect. And we're just going to go ahead and move this in here, and there we go. And you can see that the best score is 15. Now, if I play this again and I go through all the cycles, and my score is less than 15, then it won't set the best score there. I'll see you in the next tutorial. Welcome. So let's take a look at how we can go, and we've have the game over screen. We're going to say more games here. So what the more games is going to do is it's going to simply pull up the browser wherever it is. Now, one of the best parts about HTML5 is whether you're running this on your iPhone or your computer, all of these devices have a browser, and this is probably the best way to bring up your website or even your App Store page, or whatever, even a sales page if you want to have more games or whatnot. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, we need to go and we need to add in the browser functionality. And we're going to go and you can see here that under the web, it says browser. So we're going to go ahead and add that here. What that does is that will simply allow us to make a website. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy and paste this in. And I'm going to delete all this here. And the reason why I copied and pasted is because I'm just simply changing the button here. And we have the same idea, it's just we want to change the action. And so I'm going to go to browser, and you can see that there's all of this cool stuff you can do. The one that we want to go to is go to URL. Okay, and this URL is going to be www.mammothinteractive.com. And you need to put that in quotes, by the way. And we're just going to do target self. Okay, and that's pretty much all we need to do for this here. So if we run this here and we click this here, it should go to my website, and there we go. It just took a couple seconds longer than I wanted it to, but for the most part, that's how you do that here. Now, any URL you wanted to, you could go and you could add that in there. So, for example, if you had a page with just for games, you can say, if you go to this page, you can download the rest of our games. Or if, let's say, you have a specific game, it says, if you really like this game, then you got to check out this other game. There's a whole bunch of cool things that you can do with that. This concludes the tutorial. So in order to add a Twitter to your game, most people would assume that you would go and add in the Twitter icon there. You don't actually have to do that. Now, this one's a little bit more complicated, so I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to copy and paste it, and I'm going to change up the button here. Pretty simple stuff. Now, in order to put in the right URL here, we're going to essentially put this in here. Okay, and what you need to do is essentially copy this out. And this here, this highlighted area, if I kind of zoom in a little bit more, that is what is going to be printed. If you want to add in a hashtag, you have to type in the %23. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this and simply paste it in there. Now, of course, the URL needs to be within quotes, otherwise it will not work. So I'm going to go ahead and push done here. Let's go ahead and run this here, and we'll post the Twitter here, and you can see that it's there. Now, they do have to be logged in order for that to work. So why do we do it that way? Well, there's several ways we can go and post to Twitter. For the most part, every time that you go onto a different system, for example, let's say you're on Android or iOS, you have to deal with the Android API and the Twitter API in the respected platforms. If you pull it up in a browser, it's much easier because both of those systems already have it. Again, with HTML5, it's a little bit easier to do that. Okay, I'll see you in the next tutorial. Okay, so now that we have a game over screen, we need to go and add in a menu screen. Now, very rarely do games not have a menu screen. There's several reasons for this. Even though it makes sense to actually put the person in the game as quickly as possible, there needs to be a bit of downtime so the user can just get a couple seconds to find out what they're about to play. So we're going to go ahead and add a layout here, and we're going to go ahead and add an event sheet. This layout, of course, is going to be called menu screen. And you don't necessarily have to put it in the screen at the end of the name, but I personally like to do that. All right, and we'll call this menu. We'll call this menu sheet. All right, and layout size, of course, is going to be 1920 by 1080. There we go. Let's just go and zoom out, and that actually looks pretty nice. Let's hop into the layers here. Let's go and call this background, and we'll add in one more layer. Make sure the background is selected, drop in the background, arrange everything just like that, and then we'll hop back in the layers, push the background here, and we'll go and put, we can actually even put heads up display if you wanted to. So that actually works out quite well. Okay, so now that we have the buttons here, all we need to do is we need to add in, and this is going to be very simple. We're going to be going into an Adobe program and making the menu screen here. So really, this here, we can add in the more games, the play again, and the button Twitter here. But let's go and let's hop over to the game over sheet, and I'm going to clone this object type here. And you notice when I clone the object type, because we stretch these out in another tutorial, the original actually looks like this. So I'm actually going to push Control X to cut, go back to the menu screen, and then paste them in here. So these are pretty much going to be the same thing here. We're going to call this BTN menu play. We're going to call this one BTN menu more games, and then we're going to call this one BTN platypus banana. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to call this one BTN Twitter. Okay, it's going to be pretty much the same thing, except we're going to call this BTN menu Twitter. Just like that. Now we can go ahead, we can design this as any way we want here. Since this is a landscape game, having 3 buttons in a row like this is not a bad idea, right? It's not necessarily a bad idea, but it leaves a lot of the space to be desired here. So what we're actually going to do is we're actually going to kind of make this a little bit the same here. And we can probably make it, just to keep consistent, make it 500 by 200, 500 by 200, and this one's going to be 500 by 200 again. And so that's pretty much it here. And if we really want to, we can add in the nice big title here if we want to. Now, one thing I like to do is we could actually go ahead and copy all of these, right? And we can actually make an animated menu screen. Let's just deal with this first here. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop over, and I'm actually going to copy all of these here, because this is pretty much the exact same thing here. I'm going to go to the game screen sheet. In fact, I don't think we've even opened that menu sheet. Here we go. And I'm going to paste it in here, but we need to change the objects to the menu, and essentially we can leave everything the same. Menu play, BTN menu, and again, even though there is text there, the color coding really does help. So for the most part, this actually all works out, and now we have a menu screen that kind of works. This concludes the tutorial. So one of the things we can do is we can have our game here, and we see we have our menu screen. We can actually do something really cool. We can actually show the user right away what the game is supposed to do and how it's supposed to be played. So, but first, let's go and let's copy this here, and I'm actually going to clone the object type, and I'm going to simply put this here, and this is going to be just simply, we're going to call this game title. when it comes to titles, it always takes a long time for me to figure it out here. So I'm actually going to make this probably 150, and there we go. And I'm going to shorten this so that we can make it as small as we possibly can. Okay. Now what I'm also going to do is I'm going to simply copy copy a lot of this here. And what I'm going to do is I have to go over to my game screen. Is I'm simply going to copy these, okay? And I'm going to go back into my menu. And I'm going to paste them in here, okay? And if we run this right now, you see that does nothing. What I want to do is have all of the circles kind of flow in to this here, and that's actually really cool because it's showing the user the tutorial on the menu screen. Anytime you can combine and make things easier to understand in a visual way without text is actually really good. So what we're going to do is we're going to hop over into our game sheet here, and we have to find the rotation here. And where do we put that in here? So I believe it's in some kind of every tick here. So yeah, gold blocks family is going to be rotating degrees. So I'm going to copy that here, go to the menu sheet here, and I'm going to go to system, every tick, and I'm going to paste that in here. Now when you run it here, and we have to, and this is actually kind of annoying, but you have to select the right screen that you want here. Okay, now another problem, and this is why we test, is that remember when we copy these over, we actually copied them within the family. So let's hop back into the family here, and let's go into families, and let's go into gold block family, and we can actually we can go to edit here, and we're going to just remove all of the buttons here. And I'm just actually pushing control. And do you want to just make sure that we're removing all the buttons here? And that should be it. Let's run that again. There we go. So that actually looks quite nice. And you can see here that even on the title screen, it's going to go and add that in here. So this is part one of part two tutorial. The reason is that in order to make sure that the dots work out, I'm going to have to put that in its own tutorial. This concludes the tutorial. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to simply spawn all of these items here. So what I'm going to do actually is we have the menu screen and we have the menu sheet as well. What we'll do is we'll actually if we go and we do and drag out these blocks here accordingly, I'll just show you what I'm going to try and do here. So we got this, and this, the pink, the purple, and the yellow. Okay, so we'll all put these roughly at the same height here, which is going to be 335. So if we go and kind of select all these here, it's going to be 335, and then they all get kind of put up towards the center here. Now, what we'll also do is roughly eyeball this so that they're in the center of all of these here, and there we go. Now what we're going to do is if we run it here, we're just going to simply move these forward, and they're going to come down and they're going to hit into the block here. Okay, so in order to do that, we're actually I'm going to rotate all of these. So I'm actually going to select all of them here, and I'm going to go to the angle. I'm going to put 90. So all of these are rotated 90 here. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to System, every tick, and then I'm going to go into our drag blocks here, and I'm going to do this one by one. We're going to move forward at 0.5. So we're just going to run that here. And if I kind of move this over here, you can see that it slowly moves over. Slowly, slowly, slowly. Okay, let's run that again actually. So we'll run that here. Slowly it moves down. So maybe 0.5 is too much. I don't want it to be 1 because 1's going to be just a bit too fast. 0.8. So maybe 1 might actually be good. So let's take it to 1 here. So we'll go 1. And then what that's going to do is while the user is kind of looking at this, it's going to show them how the game is indeed played. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to wait 3 seconds, and then I'm going to copy this. Going to copy this once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. Instead of drag pink, we're going to replace this with, and then drag blue. So it's blue, green, orange, yellow, purple. So it's going to be blue. This one's going to be green. This one's going to be orange. This one's going to be yellow. And lastly here, this is going to be purple. Okay? And so we're going to wait 3 seconds here. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And you're going to see these just are going to go down here. And that is going to show you the tutorial. That at least shows the user the tutorial here. So that works out quite well. And you can see here that we're going to say if drag family is on collision with goal block, we're going to destroy, drag family destroy. So let's just run that again. And here we go. We got 1, and then it's going to destroy it. And it actually almost works exactly 3 seconds. Now that was a complete accident, but it kind of works out as well. And while the user is doing that here, you can see that it does indeed work, and it is a great tutorial on the main screen. This concludes the tutorial.